You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Good morning and welcome to Old Town Cleveland here on WOOP FM 99.9, or you can go to the internet at www.woopfm.com. You can call us there at 614-5553. Good morning, Debbie Moore. Tell me what's going on.
Today is January the 16th, 2016 already. We've got a nice cool morning outside. I don't believe we're going to have any bad weather here for the next few days. Today, going on over in Birchwood, and tomorrow is the Sand Hill Crane Festival. Ron and I went out this week, and there weren't a lot of cranes over there yet.
I didn't see as many as, they come.
Of course, now, thousands could have come in since then.
Right, and this is the 25th year of the Sand Hill Crane Festival also.
Now, if you go over, you can catch the little shuttle bus that'll take you over to the viewing area where you will be able to see. They were also seeing a young eagle the day that we were there. I did not see it myself, but there were folks there that said that they had seen a young eagle out there in the bay, and that there'll be a shuttle bus running from the old Birchwood School, that's now the Birchwood Community Center, over to the viewing center and to the Blythe's Ferry
Removal Park.
Cherokee Memorial Removal Park. That's it. And if you haven't seen those things, that's a good thing for you to do today. And then
they have lunch. They have barbecue plates for sale there at the festival, and TWRA usually has some wildlife displays there. And
now I know that's going on today.
Yes,
8 to 5 music, children's activities, good food. I don't know about tomorrow.
I think it's just a one-day festival.
Or it was yesterday and today.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right. What else going on?
Fro's playing tonight. For all you folks that stay up past 9 o'clock at night, Fro will be playing at the VFW. Everyone over 21's invited. Saturday, January 16th, 9 to 1. Live dance and music.
And I got to turn this off where it starts playing here on me again.
Just go ahead and turn it off.
Okay.
Ron.
I was going to say, something will start playing here in a minute. It shouldn't be playing. So who's our guest today, Dad?
We have Charlie Rodarmer with us today from the Sequoia Birthplace Museum in Loudon.
Von Orr.
Von Orr. After he named all the places in East Tennessee, he came up with Von Orr. And he's going to be talking about the Birthplace Museum, and there's always fun things to talk about when Charlie comes, because Charlie's interested in a lot of fun things. And we're glad to have you with us today, Charlie. Pull that microphone over there.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for all you having me here. So,
I told him I always invite him in January, because if it snows more than a quarter of an inch, he won't stay away. He'll come on through it.
The Sequoia Birthplace Museum, is that the official title?
Yes.
Okay, I just make sure. I've seen Charlie. We went up there and been to the museum several times and enjoy that. We got to hear Charlie make a presentation out in not Branson, Missouri, Cape Girardeau. At the National Trail of Tears meeting. They talked about Sequoia and the...
we'll be talking about him a lot today.
And pretty amazing when you start thinking about Sequoia, who could not read or write because they didn't have a language. I mean, a written language. Or
he had
created
now, could he speak English, Charlie? A little bit.
I think later. And there's an interview in Washington D.C. in 1820. Excuse me. In 1828, he goes to Washington, and there's an interview where he says, or the interviewer actually writes almost exactly at least three times in a row, I asked Sequoyah the question, he answered it, and the interpreter told me what he said. He writes that three times exactly the same. So my assumption is that if he had asked him the question, the interpreter would have asked Sequoyah. Sequoyah answered. So I think at this point, Sequoyah, I mean, he's lived on the edge between white settlers and the Cherokee Nation, and so in being a trader, being a blacksmith, being a silversmith, I think he would have utilized English to trade, to make money. But I think by this time in 1828, I mean, it's not. We know he's very traditional. He's described repeatedly. So at that point, he doesn't have to speak English, so he doesn't.
No, and if he can speak his native language, that's always the polite thing to do.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
There was no written language whatsoever, or
if you
Cherokee could not read or write. Basically, they had no concept what that was.
If you gave me an apple, Deb gave me an apple, I have two apples. Now the Cherokee could say that in their language,
Right.
but they had no symbols to write 1 + 1 = 2. They didn't have any symbols for numbers, and they didn't have any symbols to write. Ron gave me an apple, Deb gave me an apple, and I have two apples.
I
So they
really
couldn't
feel
write it down.
like the Cherokee language as we know it today would have been dead without him. I mean, if it had to remain a totally oral language, it would have been hard to have preserved it.
I think, yes, I think that it definitely would be closer to extinction, but one of the things the Cherokee have done, both the Cherokee,
Amazing.
the Eastern Band of the Cherokee in Cherokee, North Carolina, and the Cherokee Nation out in Oklahoma, have set up very intensified language programs. They identified back when I first started at Sequoyah about 15 years ago, well, we're teaching Cherokee in school, but nobody's learning and nobody's speaking it when they walk out the door. And so they started, Bo Taylor, who's the director of the Museum of the Cherokee Indian, and then Shirley Oswald, who teaches the Cherokee language class at our place. Bo actually went around the world to several different places that had turned their languages around. There was one person speaking it or two people speaking it, and then they had turned it around and had thousands or hundreds and hundreds or thousands of people speaking their language. And so Bo saw how they did this in other places in the world. Then he came back and they started tailoring these intensified classes. And right now there's the Gadoo Academy, which I think is at the 5th grade right now. So 6 years ago, kindergartners started out, and they teach everything is in Cherokee, and then they go home, and then so the English comes like you have a French class, and so then you go back to Cherokee, and so what's happened is through this intensified program, the parents that have put their kids in this program, a lot of them didn't speak Cherokee. But
They
what's
remember
happening
Grandma speaking it. Yeah.
exactly, and what's happening is their kids are teaching them to speak
Absolutely.
Cherokee. So it's kind of a cool program.
I went out. There was a Cherokee women's seminar or something a couple of years ago, and I went out and visited the new school there in Cherokee, and it was a beautiful school, and the children were so well behaved, and I was really impressed with it. I think it's kindergarten or preschool through high school.
Yeah, that's the very new. It's a state of the art building. The lights go out when nobody's in the room. The lights come on when somebody comes in. It's shaded so that the heat of the sun won't warm the room up during the winter time, or won't warm it up during the summer, or maximizes the solar heat during the winter. It's an incredible building.
I was really impressed,
Buildings.
and they put in all the new tracks and football things, and the different things for different sports and stuff. I thought it was really impressive, really impressive.
To me, I read about Sequoyah and what I know, that I would hate to think that I would have to have been the one who created a language.
It was not a fast
a
process.
written language from something that I had literally no concept. Apparently, he had seen writing that the English had done, or the American, and didn't know what that meant. But he realized that we need that too, and that just amazing. And then just the communications among the Cherokee just exploded after they learned how to do it, and it seemed like they learned it very quickly too.
It's a much more efficient language than English too. If you have one symbol, it means this, and in English we just it's an ugly language.
Well, it's the syllabary.
Yes.
So if you know the
It's
language,
phonetics. Yeah.
all you have to do is learn the symbol that goes with the sound. You sound it out, you start writing things down. You sound it out, you start reading. The more you read, the more you write, the better you became at it. So it was very quick to learn if you were a native speaker already. And so, and there again, with English, I mean, we've got all these rules, you've got all these things.
Exceptions.
And you know, the difference is not an alphabet. We use the alphabet. So you have to take those letters and you put the letters together to create the syllables. Then you put the syllables together to create the word. And then, so, you know,
It's much more
Sequoyah
difficult.
didn't go quite as far as an alphabet. He stopped at the sound, the syllable.
And what was this, 12 years, 8 years it took him?
12 years.
12 years from the time he thought, this will be a good idea. Now, he was born in 1776 or so, around there.
Circa, yeah.
Yeah, in what is now Von Orr.
Mhm.
But it was Tuskegee or
Tuskegee.
Tuskegee. Now, is that the same word as the word that's used up in Blount County for? Yeah, sort of. What does that word mean? We don't know.
I'm not sure. It's actually a Creek word. So
I'm forever saying that on the show is that we've always said, well, that's an Indian word. Well, yes, we're correct in the fact that when the Cherokees came here, everything was already named, and they just adopted the the Creek names. And
well, you have some influences at different times where the Creek are coming and asking for sanctuary, and it's not quite sure when or how that word pops in, but and exactly which influence period. But there's a number of overhill towns are Creek words, and so
Etowah, Ottawa. I don't know about Ottawa, but Etowah. There's a lot of words. If you find a word that no one knows what the meaning of it is in Cherokee, if people that speak Cherokee shake their head no, well, then we can be reasonably assured it's a Creek word. But I've always found that to be very interesting because there's things here in Bradley County that's probably Creek words too. Here in a few minutes, we're going to call the chairman of the Friends of Sequoyah Birthplace Museum, and we're going to talk to him a little bit about some exciting things that are going on up there at the museum. And how long have you been there, Charlie?
I got there July of 2000, so
15 years
so
or
15 and a half years.
Wow.
So it's an incredible place. I'm from Western North Carolina, over near Canton. Spent most all of my life in Western North Carolina. I've been coming over and volunteering at Fort Loudon back since about 80. Probably the first time I was there was 86 or 87. And then joined the independent company there doing the living history around 87, 88. And so I've been coming to East Tennessee and to Von Orr for back when it was a 2-lane road and you wanted to go there.
Yeah,
you had to want.
Well, now, here, the last couple times I've seen you out, you were dressed like Reverend Samuel Worcester. Worcester.
Yeah, it depends on if you're from up north or down south.
We're going to talk about him in a few minutes, but I want to talk about your fascination with him. And Ron and I talked a little bit last night about at some point in time, if you need to record your presentation of him, we'd be glad to do that for you.
Oh, well, thank you.
We play with video cameras.
I still got to work
Ron,
on
if
it.
you'll give me the phone, I will call Max while you and Charlie chat. And folks, I'll be back with you in just a few minutes.
But Charlie, one other thing that I know you do that is outside the Sequoyah thing. For the last couple of years, you've been playing vintage baseball. And when I say vintage baseball, it's the early rules where the pitcher tries to get you the ball to hit, not like in today's, they trying to keep it away from you.
Oh, yeah.
But you try to hit that, and you get one bounce, and you didn't really have gloves.
No gloves.
The rules are quite different. And you've played on the team for the last couple of years. What team were you playing for?
The Knoxville Holstons. There were several teams in Knoxville, and the Knoxville Holstons were the Confederate team after the war. They were playing like 1867. But we actually used the 1864 rules. That was when you could still catch the ball on the first bounce, and the striker who was the batter, the striker would be out. And so we still play 1864 rules. And it's the Tennessee Vintage Baseball League. So you can go to the the Wild Web and Google it, Tennessee Vintage Baseball, and the website will come up. We've got our schedule for this year.
Is there a Chattanooga team now?
Well, there's 2 Chattanooga teams.
Okay, yeah, okay, great.
There's 2 Chattanooga teams. They play down at Fort Oglethorpe there at the Cavalry Museum. They wonderful field, great place to play. Played there last year once. But there's several teams in and around Nashville. We have 2 teams in Knoxville, and we have matches that are taking place about every other weekend, starting in May, and runs through our tournament, which is the same weekend as our fall festival at Sequoia Birthplace.
Some Nashville teams too, right?
Right. There's Nashville teams. There's I think 10 teams this year. There may be some more. I haven't been. I know we're just starting to get communication for this year.
So, are we ready here?
We're ready. Max is
Well,
on
we
the
got.
line.
Let me get this. Make sure everything works here.
I was trying to call
Hello,
him.
Max. How you doing this morning?
Oh, good morning. Good morning to you.
This is Max Ramsey, friends of the Sequoia Birthplace Museum. How you doing this morning?
Doing fine. Just sitting here looking at some material about the museum this morning.
Well,
Okay.
I understand you got some things to tell us about what's going on at the museum, or soon to be going on in the area.
Well, we have a package of opportunities that we're currently working on for the Eastern Band. Of course, this is land down on Tellico Reservoir. That land was formerly lands of the Overhill Cherokee in the 16 and 1700s, back in the 1700 side when Sequoia was born there. The village, former Cherokee village of Tuskegee, very near, about 200 or 300 yards from where our museum is located. Thus, the name Sequoia Birthplace Museum.
That is, it's so exciting that someone knew where he was born, and it could be, designated.
So this, understanding that that land may be deeded back to the Cherokees now, somewhere along the way.
The current process is one through the U.S. Department of the Interior, through the Bureau of Indian Affairs, where tribes can make an appeal for returning certain properties that used to be a part of their nations through a trust process by having lands placed in trust to the U.S. Department of Interior, which would in essence provide those properties as a return of reservation lands once more. And in our case, the lands that we're talking about a total of perhaps 80 acres, on scattered tracts. These were, in essence, former Cherokee principal towns, village sites, as well as sites for the construction of the Sequoia Birthplace Museum. And all this is done under permanent easement rather than a fee title because of circumstances associated with TVA being able to go ahead with its Tellico Reservoir project and not have to wait potentially for a year or so to finish that project because it takes a while to get an act of Congress.
And it is an act of Congress, isn't it, Max?
Well, let me ask you a question. If that land is deeded or conveyed back to the Cherokees, would that be the only Cherokee reservation property in the state of Tennessee then?
It would return it to that status, yes, because because now it's under permanent easement through another public law that TVA was able to use to get the land in the hands of the Cherokee, not in reservation title, but under a permanent lease, as long as the lands were used for the intended purposes of the easement, they could be used by the Cherokees for those purposes. This contrasts with that by putting it back as reservation lands, but for specific purposes as defined in House Resolution 3965, which Congressman Fleischman has already introduced on the floor.
Okay, well, let me address the elephant in the room. There will be no casino there.
No, that's correct.
Okay, all history, which is fine with me, but I know that's probably what was going through our listeners' minds. And, this land, have you been able to use this land for the museum, or is this, okay, so it's been a process that you've been able to use it, but at this point in time, it will officially return back to the Eastern Band.
That's correct, and they will plan to have their headquarters for their Tennessee holdings. I happen to be their appointed tribal agent for their land and land rights.
Wonderful. Well, it's time for us to welcome them back to their own home.
This is a very important thing to the tribe, and been seeking this for some time, and this will be the official return to the state of Tennessee.
Now, Max, is there something that we can do to help with this, or it's just it's going through the processes already?
The House resolution is on the table already. Congress has not called for hearings. If that happens, we'll go up and have hearings, but no controversy since.
Well, surely to goodness there will not be a controversy.
You mentioned the process of gaming, and there is language in the bill which says there will be no such gaming allowed on these properties.
That's right. Because it's a sacred place too. It's a sacred place, and we don't need to be gaming there. Well, Max, we appreciate you taking time this morning to talk with us and to keep us up to date on that. And anytime there's anything going on at the museum, you or Charlie feel free to call in and let our listeners know.
Well, we thank you for taking the opportunity to bring the public up to date on what's going on. We have big plans for a potential historic district in that area.
Well, and as all of us know, these things don't happen unless people of passion are driving them, and we appreciate your volunteering and having the passion to get this done.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Now, let me kind of sum that up. Help me out here, Charlie.
Yes, ma'am.
Who does the museum belong to today?
The Eastern Band of the Cherokee.
Right. And in the original plan, this 70-plus acres was part of the process was it was going to belong to the Eastern Band, but it was never officially signed over because of a little thing called the Snell daughter.
It goes back to the process when the Eastern Band and the Cherokee Nation saw there was no stopping the dam that was going to be covering up the majority of their sacred sites and home sites, town sites.
Now, what year was that?
That would have been
that's late, 70s.
The 70s. The dam was finished and closed in November of 1979. So this all took place in the mid to late 70s. And
I can understand in 1938 when we may have not realized the significance of having a actual site that could be developed. But in 1979, we should have known better than cover it with water. That's Debbie Moore's personal opinion.
Well, who knows? The national media never gave the Cherokee story. They
were after
promoted the Snell daughter, the environmental issue. But and you had the environmentalists on one side protesting against the dam. You had the Cherokees on another corner protesting the dam. You had people on the other side protesting for economic development and for the things that it was going to bring. And so it's interesting. The board that makes up the Sequoia Birthplace Museum, the Friends of Sequoia, are very diverse. I mean, they're 35 years ago they were protesting each other and on opposite street corners, and that now they've come together over the last 30 years to operate the museum.
So then at some point in time in the recent future, recent past, someone went, hey, we never officially got that 76 acres.
Right. It was never because of that Snell Darter delay, they didn't want to hold it up, is my understanding. And so it was kind of tabled, and then Max Ramsey and Bob Blankenship got to talking about it. It's like, that was supposed to be reservations. So they started inquiring, and TVA went, yeah, you're right. So that started a year and a half, 2 years ago, the process. And so our congressmen, both in North Carolina and South Carolina, North Carolina and Tennessee, are kind of ramrodding it through. So
Makes sense to me.
so hopefully, yeah.
So
basically-
what will you do this land? Will they be what? Is there any plans for anything to go on it, or?
Well, one of the things, they're actually Chota and Tanasi, which are up the lake about 12 miles from the museum. We have, I guess, agreements or easements up there as well. Those two pieces of property are going to be linked by shoreline property. So it'll actually be an increase to the amount of property that the Cherokee will have. But we're going to build a trail that will connect Tanasi and Chota together. So you can go up to Chota, Tanasi, and take a day hike between the two. It's one of the things we've wanted to get some picnic, shelters maybe up there. When I got to the museum, the two sites had kind of been, they were just kind of there. And one of the things, I guess my background, not only in history, but criminal justice, and, I've looked at things more like a park ranger, and several of my good friends are park rangers, so they kind of have led me down the path. But so building trails and things outside, I don't want to go see some museum about some guy made a writing system. That sounds boring. Oh, they got a hiking trail? Well, let's go hike.
Especially around here,
And
what
you-
gorgeous sights we have naturally.
Exactly. And, the thing is, so many people, we have the Maxwell D. Ramsey Shoreline Trail that it's 1.5 miles around the property at the museum. We built that 5 years ago with some help from Ed and Arlene Decker there in Monroe County, or Blount County, I think. But part of that was that, there were people that would go hiking, but not necessarily go to a museum. I don't want to go. But they, well, let's pop in. And then, in a way, we educate people without them really realizing, this is kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
This guy's kind of an incredible individual for what he did, the challenges he faced, and, adversity, but yet he continued to strive and created over a 12-year period a Cherokee writing system. Silbury.
Judge Lusk grew up in our Flint Springs area where John Ross lived. And in his early 1930 articles, he indicated that Sequoyah came through here and stayed for a short period of time.
Mhm.
And, of course, I've never found any documentation to that. So, to me, it just seems like he was kind of a nomad there for a while. Maybe he lived in a lot of different places.
Well, so,
Do you think?
I think we know
Well, of course, the guy that with the Cherokee Phoenix printing press was here.
yeah.
You would want to be around Elias Boutonnet or,
Well, at this point, for a long time, this is kind of the center of Cherokee Nation.
it was the Cherokee.
so this is where everything was happening. And so
So it makes perfect sense to me. I eat a Twix bar.
we have documentation that Sequoyah lived in 4 different places. The village of Tuskegee, or that area, and that area. So it's not like he lived in the village the whole time. It was in that area. We were actually tracking down possible deeds and some records that might indicate where exactly he was living. From the documentation, he goes to Willstown. He's down in Willstown for about 5 years.
Which is now Fort Payne.
Fort Payne, right there at Fort Payne. Then he goes to the Skin Bayou out in Arkansas, and he lives out there for about 5 years. And then he moves over to Salazar, which is it's
Close to Oklahoma, Alabama.
Well, it's actually-
Arkansas.
well, it's in Oklahoma. It's across the line, and he was already living
Mill
there in 1829. So almost 10 years before the forced removal happens out here in the east, he's already living in the Indian Territory. So he's one of the old settlers that was there. And now there's stories of him living at Nickajack. There's stories that it wasn't Fort Payne, that it was more north of there. There's stories. There's 2 towns in Georgia that claim him. There's this whole, and as a younger man, I don't see why he wouldn't roam around. I mean, the Cherokee were known to go off on hunting parties, trading parties, and so war parties, and so for him to wander around and to, oh yeah, Sequoyah was here for a while. Well, not necessarily living there.
I
but
don't
he may-
admit this often, Charlie, that I don't know where someone's buried. Where is he buried? Do we know?
We have no idea. He was he and his son and some other Cherokee had went towards Texas, Mexico, looking for a missing group of Cherokee that had left this area during the Revolution and had disappeared. And so Chief Ross, remembering the stories of this group, said, "Hey, anybody want to go?" Well, Sequoyah and his son and several others volunteered to go looking for this group. They get down into Mexico, and actually they did find them, but there's they have some horses stolen. Sequoyah's not feeling well. They put him in a cave.
He'd have to be pretty old by then.
Yeah, and so, well, he's in his late 60s, I guess.
Well, in that time,
Yeah,
that was pretty aged.
and so he's there's a flash flood. He's washed out into kind of just wanders around the desert for like 3 days. The son comes back and finds him missing. They start looking for him. They track him down. Then the story kind of breaks off that they get him back to the cave. He dies there. They bury him in this cave in northern Mexico. Other stories, he starts to get a little better, so they set out for a town in southern Texas. Well, he dies on the way. The other story is he gets to the little town in southern Texas and he dies there. Whether he dies on the way or dies there, they take his body, they bury him in an unmarked grave. Of course, the Cherokee leave, the little town, eventually everybody else leaves. Eventually the wind, the rain blows everything away, and the point is we don't know where he's
We
buried.
don't know. Well, I thought there was some reason I didn't know. Well, that's very interesting. And so, what year would he have died approximately?
He died in August of 1843.
So he never went on the Trail of Tears. He took himself out west early,
He was he was in that group.
which is kind of the prominent people. I mean, some of the people just went
Yeah.
ahead and moved themselves.
It's different political kind of thoughts. The Cherokee and like I think Sequoyah's very traditional, but I think he's very progressive, and I think that's one of the things he was looking for. Well, if they go west, maybe this is where this will be ours. And so I think, like almost all immigrations, it's the parents thinking, I want a better life for myself, and I want an even better life for my kids.
Yeah, and they thought, well, if we remove ourselves away from this, it will be better. You and I had a discussion. I believe it was it was one of those places we saw you last fall, that I was going to type up the evaluations, and there's over 500 of them, Charlie.
Oh wow!
And that would be in 1836, they came through and evaluated the property of all Cherokees that were still here. Some of them are in Hamilton County, some are in the edge of McMinn County, Polk County, Bradley County, Hamilton County, and I'm over halfway there.
Wow!
And it's pretty amazing because you see that the half-breeds and the white men that were married to Cherokee women seem to get a little bit more for their property than the full-bloods did.
Right.
But still, it's not their cattle or anything like that. It's the buildings that what they were going to leave behind, basically. Right. The buildings wise, and if it was a mill, it talks about the inner workings of the mills.
Oh,
and,
wow.
Are you excited?
Yeah.
And now what I need for you to do is to look for the ones that have the little maps and kind of guide me to those, because I think some of those are going to be those, but most of these are just a written document by people who write with very poor handwriting.
Oh, yeah.
Who may be the end of my eyes. But anyway, I'm hoping to have that out before the National Trail of Tears meeting
Oh, that'd be awesome.
The
Incredible information.
You're listening to Old Town Cleveland here on Whoop FM 99.9, or you can go to the internet at www.whoopfm.com. You can call us here at 614-5553. Got Charlie Rodamer here, the executive director of the Sequoia Birthplace Museum. I try to get all these titles down.
Let's get this
And he
in.
does-
Von Orr.
Von Orr. He does
Got a phone call.
several other things too in the community and around, and I've seen him in World War I outfits,
Or
and
two.
he does
World
do
War II
everything. Good morning, folks. You're live on Old Town Cleveland.
Good morning. You're live on the air.
Good morning, Miss Deb.
Yes,
How you doing this morning?
I'm good. Is this Bullet?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You sounded a little funny. Good to talk to you.
I would have sworn your guest just sounded just like John Stansbury.
Oh no, he don't scream like John does. John's on our political program
okay.
not ours. Somebody else's political program that's on here.
It's almost just like him. I mean,
Nope,
kind of insult him or
nope.
nothing. I heard you've been talking about Sequoia as the birthplace of the museum. Also, don't they have these dams there too?
Yeah, that's what we were talking about in a roundabout way, is that there was a big controversy when that Indian Village was going to be covered, but at the same time that a little old snail darter was there, and we all remember the hoopla with the snail darter, and unfortunately the Indian Village lost out, and I think they found more snail darters somewhere else.
Yep, the little snail darter is living well in a lot of other places, so he did not go extinct.
Okay. Deb, may I put a plug in for Pro Daddy?
Go right ahead.
He's going to be at the BFW tonight, throwing friends, and I'm going to be there and see him for a little bit. And old Pro, he's a good old boy, and he's going to be at the BFW from I think it's from 9 to 1. So I just thought I'd give him a little plug.
Yep, and that's on North Ocoee Street.
Yep.
Go up and see Fro and the friends.
Yeah. There you go.
Uh,
Anyway, I do. How you been doing, Miss Deb?
I'm good. You know, I lost my mom last week, and that's always hard, but it's the best for her, and so it's been kind of an adjustment there, but, you know, life goes on.
Well, I'm sorry to hear about that. I didn't know, and like you say, life goes on. I lost both my parents, and
It's hard.
you just learn to live with it.
Yep, that's it. All righty. Thank you, Bullet. We'll be talking to you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Bullet, we appreciate Bullet. He takes care of, he and his brother Paul go up almost every day and check on the Veterans Cemetery up at Fort Hill and make sure that it's tidy and the tombstones are placed.
Before we get into any more discussion, tell everybody that lives in Cleveland, McMinn, Polk, how do you get to the Sequoia Birthplace Museum?
Well, if you can go straight up 411, and when you hit Von Orr, it's actually the second red light. We've got 3 red lights now.
Oh,
Yeah, they got the red light there in front of the Food City, then the red light at 72, and then the red light at 360, Highway 360. You can't miss it. Sloan's Center's right there. If Sloan's doesn't have it, you don't need it.
Yep.
And,
we like to stop and go through there and look at all this. They have all this hardware and stuff,
yeah,
and it's
Oh,
kind of, yeah.
ammunition, if anything you need, if Sloan's doesn't have it, you don't need it.
right.
And you turn there on 360, and we're a mile and a quarter out on the right. So we share an island with Fort Loudon State Historic Area. You can visit the website, Sequoia. Just Google Sequoia Museum, and it'll come right up.
What dates, times open?
We're open Monday through Saturday 9 to 5, and Sundays 12 to 5. So Sunday we're 12 to 5.
Closed holidays?
Closed Christmas, New Year's, and Thanksgiving. So
Oh, okay.
don't have to worry for a while.
Let's get this call here. Go ahead, caller. You're live.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I've got a question. It may sound stupid, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Go ahead, Pat.
What was the origin of the name Sequoia?
Well, that could take a while, but typically most Cherokee speakers say Sequoia means pig's foot. And part of this is that Sequoia had he limped. What causes the limp is we don't know. Some say it was rheumatoid arthritis. Some say he was wounded in a hunting accident as a small boy. He was wounded at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend when he was in the United States Army, serving during the Creek War. So what actually caused him, some say he had clubfoot or a deformed foot. So whatever caused him to walk limping like a stiff leg, and that's how most of the Cherokee speakers kind of equate it, is that
For some reason.
he walks kind of stiff-legged, like you know how a pig will kind of waddle. It wasn't making fun of him; it was just kind of a description of the way he walks. There's other stories that you can, if you change a syllable in Sequoia, it turns the word into principal bird or sparrow.
Hey, that's what I want to hit on. Something I've run across. Have you seen old shell gorget from the Mississippian period of 4 pilated woodpeckers? They're oriented with 4 logs of the sacred fire, and a solar symbol around the fire.
Yeah, I've seen them. So I really don't know that much about the Mississippian period. My focus has always been the 18th century from fur trade up. So
that's called a scribe priest shell gorget. It's like symbols of office, much like or status, like a mason's jewel.
Yes.
And the woodpeckers on that gorget, their name is Sequoia. I just thought that was, a strange coincidence.
It is. It is,
Yeah.
Pat.
yeah, so there's like I say, there's a lot of stories, and depending on the speaker you talk to, there's other variations, but we do know Sequoia's mother gave him the English name George Gist, and he used George Gist throughout his life, as well as using Sequoia.
So what does George mean?
I'm not sure.
We don't have we don't have any meetings for our names, do we?
I talked to you, I believe, the last time you was here, and told you some of my ancestors married to what was it? The Guest family there, the Christopher Guest, his son.
So that's not a common name either. The GIST, is that the way it's spelled?
Right.
It's not a common name.
His
Right.
father was
Not
a
in-
trader from
Not in
Virginia.
this area, at
Yeah.
least.
Yeah, he was Nathaniel Gist, and he was coming in from Virginia. He may have done some surveying as well, but and we know he had been trading with the Cherokee for a long time, and he must have been an honest trader because they actually offered him a place to live, offered him land on the Holston River. George Washington knows he's has a very good relationship with the Cherokees, and it's Washington asked him to come and talk to the Cherokee about not coming in on the side of the British when war was to explode.
And it was George, was he, or Sequoia, was he a full blood? Or was his dad? And full bloods is a strange term too. I mean,
there's never a simple answer in any of these questions.
Yes.
If you look at the definition of who Sequoia is as our standards, you would say he's a half-blood.
Yeah.
Nathaniel Gist, white father, Cherokee mother, Orta. Okay, the two of them married. Cherokee society in the 18th century, it's a matriarchal society. You get your identity through your mother. She owns the house. She owns the property. She is who gives you your identity. So we know Huerta was of the Bird clan. So what clan would Sequoia be? Bird clan. So Sequoia has a clan. If you have a clan, you are Cherokee. You are Jalagi. And so if you look at and this is the way I put it, is you look at who really counts. Who's he living with? The people, his friends, his family. How do they see him?
And they were living as Cherokees.
They see him as a full blood.
Full blood, right?
Period. And so, so when I give my answer, if I give a short one, he's a full blood. And they'll go, I thought he had a white father. Well, he did, but then you're going to get the long answer. So
Right.
I appreciate you.
Thanks, Pat.
Advice there. Let somebody else call.
All right, bye
Hey,
bye.
thanks, Matt. Good talking to you.
You know, I always felt like it wasn't a birth defect because at that time they would not, if he had been defected at birth, they would not always let the children strive. You know what I'm saying? Was that the parents kind of had the choice
right.
of whether or not to feed the baby and let it live, but it may not have looked so bad that the mom, let him survive. Of course, that's a little later in 1776, the earlier generations, because they didn't have the means to take care of someone that couldn't take care of themselves. You had to be self-sufficient.
Right.
So
And-
where was Sequoia born? Do you know where he was basically born?
They always say he was born in or around the village of Tuskegee.
Okay.
Now, see, there's tall tales. There's a group of people that say he was born and grew up in Weir's Valley, and so that's one of the interesting things about Sequoia. There are so many stories, and see, it's at that period where the Cherokees are known for great orators, telling incredibly detailed stories. I mean, being able to give their arguments and just debating, and so and then they're just getting this writing thing, and so what I think is happening is you end up with all these, and as any storyteller knows, there's certain things you're not going to give up if it's a good story, and so so I think that's why we end up with a lot of different tall tales. He may have passed through, and I usually when somebody tells me, "Oh, well, I've heard this," well, I say, find me documentation. Find me this is where we know he lived at these 4 places. I know he visited other places. We know he traveled down to
Now,
Alabama.
did he ever go to Washington City, Washington, D.C.?
Oh yeah, he was in Washington D.C.
Is that where his portrait came from that we have?
His portrait was painted in 1828 in D.C. That portrait was destroyed in a fire in the 1860s at the Smithsonian.
Oh.
It was in the 1830s, late 1830s or mid 30s. A print company came in and made a print from that painting. So the print that we have in the museum, it's the one you can tell. It's kind of he's a little older looking. There's the brochure, the one that's on our brochure. I call this the PR version.
Yes, he's very young. And
He's a little young.
Yeah.
And the thing about his ears, you don't see his ears. In the other print, the early print, you can see his ears have been mutilated.
Yes.
That's a symbol that he went through the rites to be a warrior. So Sequoia was a warrior, and
even with the handicap, which may
Right.
kind of indicate that that's where the handicap came from.
so some say he was an incredible warrior. That was one of the things he spent a lot of his young life going off and kind of as a mercenary, helping fight other. There again,
Horseshoe Bend. He was there, right?
yeah, he was at Horseshoe Bend. He joined the United States Army, served in the Army during the Creek War, and so we do know he took part in that. As I say, some of the other stories that he was actually, he liked to go to war, and so find me documentation. That's one of the things that at the museum we want to collect all the information we could possibly, whether it's oral, we can prove it or disprove it, or because every little bit's
Well,
part of that story.
That's kind of like me saying that he was here, when this was still the Indian nation. Is that there's going to a letter will turn up somewhere. If he was really here, a letter will turn up, or an article in the Cherokee Phoenix to indicate a time. But
In the Cleveland Daily
It's kind of-
Banner, or
yeah,
yeah. If someone comes to the museum, what do they expect to see? I know you have stuff inside the museum and outside the museum. Tell people what's the cost to come.
Well, general admission is $3 for adults. Then we have discounted rates for 12 students. We do have tour rates for groups, whether it's a family or school group. We also have AAA discount, and so
A senior citizen.
and senior citizen discount. Yes, we have that at 55 and up. So
Well, I qualify.
We do have occasionally free days. Typically, we do Statehood Day, which is kind of at the end of May, 1st of June, is a free admission
Which would
day.
be a great time to come because
Yeah.
you could see the outdoor stuff there and at Fort Loudon too.
So,
hopefully.
but now if you have kids, or if you're a history buff like us, you may want to go. Or if you have kids, if they come to the museum, I know there's bears out front and different things, and the walking trail and things. That tell people if they go in the museum, what will they see?
When you go in now, what you'll see in the exhibit is a lot of archaeology from that period, because that was what was fresh in everybody's mind 30 years ago when they were putting the museum together.
Which is interesting.
So yeah, it's very detailed, going through different periods of how the people that were living there developed, and so different pottery, projectile points, the introduction of weaving, and so you kind of come through there. We also tell the story of Lieutenant Henry Timberlake, who visited the Cherokee Overhill in 1762, the Emissaries of Peace, which is the exhibit over at the Museum of the Cherokee Indian in Cherokee, North Carolina. We have kind of a mini exhibit on Timberlake and his experience and him writing the memoirs, telling us this incredible story of how the Cherokee were living and eating and their homes in 1762 when he visited for about 3 months. And then, of course, he takes Ostenaca, takes Ostenaca to England to visit, to meet the king and 2 other Cherokees.
That's amazing.
And we
Now,
also
where else did Timberlake visit in this area that he wrote about? Did he visit anywhere else?
No, he visited for about 3 months that Overhill section, from where the Little Tennessee kind of, what we call the Little Tennessee now, runs into the Tennessee. His map kind of covers kind of just that section of the Overhill, about 10 or 15 towns.
Now, briefly tell them, or you can talk as long as you want to.
Oh.
Be brief. What do you see when you go to Fort Loudon, and why is that there?
Fort Loudon is a reconstruction. It's exactly where it was, but it's been raised 15 feet or 17, 18 feet. So you're standing
To
exactly.
keep the river out of it.
Well, that was the
Yeah,
problem. The dam, half of the fort would be underwater because it was built on a bank or on the hill, and so it was raised up. It's about 18 feet at the bottom, and it's about 4 feet up at the top. So it's not as steep as it used to be. So it was when you look at it, it was a much steeper hill. The fort was built in 1756. The Cherokee wanted it. The British wanted it. Over a couple of years, things went south. Bad communication, miscommunication, no communication, and you end up with the Cherokee War exploding. Oconostota actually lays siege to Fort Loudon, and in August of 1760, the garrison surrendered to the British. What did I say? The garrison, the British, surrendered to Oconostota. They were allowed to march out under arms. The Cherokee attacked them the next morning because the British had violated the agreement. They'd actually, I think, tried to destroy some of the powder, possibly some of the arms, and I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back, because Attakullakulla, who was a big supporter of the British, I think he had hammered this out to try to get things back on track. And I think when the garrison did what they did to the munitions, that resulted in the Oconostota.
So when they came into that garrison, did they come by river?
No, they came to the Unicoi Turnpike.
Unicoi Turnpike.
So they came over the mountain. Basically, you can start from Chota, and you could end up kind of over towards Murphy, end up down in Helen, Georgia, and eventually end up in Charleston, South Carolina.
Okay.
So that path has been used before the Europeans ever showed up. It was used before the Cherokee ever show up. It was used it was a migratory path of animals. And so as people moved into this area 10, 15,000 years ago, they're following the animal path. So that's where that.
I like to go to Fort Loudon because it actually does look like what I would imagine the original buildings would look like, but it's basically barracks and blacksmith shops and everything you would have needed to survive.
The firm.
And they have a really nice new video that explains why it's all
very
there.
good.
That's the last time Ron and I went up. They had just released that new video, and we went up and visited Sequoia, and then we visited Von Orr.
The briars around the outside of what kind of bushes are those?
Those are.
I don't want to plant any of
I
those,
thought
but I'm making sure I don't
thought
get any
about-
planted. That would be rough to get through.
Those are.
That's why they're there, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
Exactly
It was
why they're
actually
there.
it was a natural barbed wire fence that
I had forgotten about that.
It has thorns like 3 inches on there. And,
Yes,
and I cannot remember the name of it. Hawthorne.
I don't know.
We don't know.
You're telling this story. I don't
It
know.
just looked really dangerous when we saw it.
Yeah, you don't want to go running into them.
I noticed. I said, "Lord, look at the thorns. They're big, wooden, very pointy.
yeah.
It would make a mark.
Now, and one of the things you take and break those thorns off and use them for needles.
Sure."
So I mean, they were very.
To punch holes and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Folks, you're listening to Old Town Cleveland here on Whoop FM 99.9, or you can go to the internet at www.whoopfm.com. You can call us here at 614-5553. Charlie Road Armor. I say that right, don't I?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yeah.
And I can spell it right, too.
What
It's
is
right,
the,
OHODAMER.
Nope.
What did I miss?
RH.
All right. Oh, well, I just didn't say it. I knew it was there.
RH.
I knew it was there. I just didn't say it. Okay.
what's the origins of that name?
German.
German.
So and it always amazed me when I was in the Army. You would have these drill sergeants that were pronouncing 25-syllable Eastern European names, and they could do it just like rolling off their tongue. They would get to my name, and it would be, I'd hear, rur, 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 and I'm like, Road Armor? Yeah, here.
You're
Give me
right.
25.
Yeah,
Yeah, don't tell me what your name is.
now, what did you do in the Army?
Field artillery in the 82nd Airborne. So.
Mm-hmm. And your dad was an airborne guy too?
Yeah, Dad was, he was in the 11th Airborne up at Fort Campbell, and they ended up being sent to Germany, and he didn't have enough time, so he spent the last 6 months down in the 82nd. He was infantry.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Very interesting.
So, we're talking about the Sequoia Birthplace Museum and that entire area there.
$2 is very
around.
reasonable, and I think Fort Loudon's free, isn't it?
yeah, Fort Loudon's free to visit.
And that, you can make a day of that. You just go up
Right.
early one morning. You can go by the hardware store.
And looking.
I
Now,
did.
Ron and I got fascinated with. They had something that you picked nuts up off the ground.
It was a little wheel. It with
Mhm.
wires in it, and it was on a handle. You rolled it along. As it hit the nut, the little wire would open up. The nuts would end up inside of it. So you'd have to bend over to pick things up.
Oh, cool.
And so
in
we
mine,
played
bending
for-
over picking things up. It's a big deal.
I thought that we had the best. We did have a good time at the hardware store.
And what's the blockhouse?
Hmm?
The blockhouse.
Now, the blockhouse, I'm glad you mentioned that, because the blockhouse is a very important part of the story for Sequoia, because the blockhouse was built to keep whites from encroaching on the Cherokee lands. And so they would run patrols out of the blockhouse to make sure no white settlers were sneaking in onto the Cherokee land. And if you had business in Cherokee, or with the Cherokee, you would go to the blockhouse and get a pass, and then you would go conduct your business, finish up, then you would come back and check out there at the blockhouse. Well, when Thomas Jefferson came up with the Americanization program, not only the Cherokee but all the natives, we're going to turn them into little white European settler types, and so we're going to start teaching them, animal husbandry, cash crops. We're going to teach the women to spin and weave and to make butter and to make cheese. And so what they did is they built onto the blockhouse the factory, and the factory was kind of a trading post / technical school. And so that's where, Sequoia's mother, he builds a spring house to store the milk from her milk cows. That's a prime example of what's going on with the Americanization. Getting cows, milking them, making butter, making cheese. And so this is a prime example. And they're living, at one point there's a quote about them living 1.5 miles from 9 Mile Creek runs into the Tennessee. So within that area, he's living basically 1.5 miles from the Tellico Blockhouse. I've read where he taught himself to silversmith, and we do well. The one thing I've heard people say he taught himself to blacksmith. Well, you can teach some things blacksmithing. I personally, when I was in high school, I was living with my grandmother. I had my grandfather's blacksmith shop. I had the advantage of books with drawings, and I tried to teach myself. I spent probably 6-9 months, and there were things like welding and there were tempering, certain things I just couldn't do it. And so I ended up giving up, and it was actually in college I met a blacksmith and started working for him while I was at Western Carolina University. And he's the one that taught me those little fine nuances of welding and tempering and doing those things. Sequoia couldn't read. He had no advantage of that. And so
No YouTube.
No YouTube. Yeah, that's it. And I didn't even have a YouTube, so that might have helped me. But he would have gone. That was one of the things. They had a blacksmith shop there outside of the blockhouse, and I think that's where he learned to go blacksmith. And we know there was about 8 Cherokee blacksmiths in the Overhill by 1810. So
when did that part of Tennessee? When did that become Tennessee and the Cherokee Nation move out? What years was that? It kept moving down to where we live at today,
right
here in Bradley County. But when did it start moving out of that area?
Out of that area, it was the Tellico Treaty of 18. There's a series of Tellico treaties that was done at the Tellico Blockhouse.
Yeah.
And it was finally, I think it was the Treaty of 1819, because all the Cherokee have packed up and left by 1819. So I think it's the Treaty of 1818. They gave them a year or two to get out or to move. Now we do have pockets. We have the pockets up near Coker Creek that stayed behind, and when they stayed behind, they were no longer Cherokee citizens, and so they kind of
Did they lose their land?
Some of them actually could take a reservation. That's one of the things we're looking for, is some of those records of some of the reservations. And
now, when you say they left, did they all leave for Oklahoma, or did they come down to the Cherokee Nation, well, what we call the Cherokee Nation down here?
They're moving south.
They're coming to Bradley County and Georgia at that time.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the river, but it was everything. They had to move south of the river, and once they moved south, Hiwassee. There, thank you.
Yeah.
They moved. So everybody that was living north of Hiwassee had to move and clear out of that tract of land around.
So that comes all the way through what today is McMinn County.
Mm-hmm.
McMinn, all the way down to the Hiwassee River.
Right.
Okay.
And so, at that point, then you've got the Cherokee. I mean, some of them are going south and heading down to New Echota, or staying, in some of the towns that are through this area. You've got some that are headed over into North Carolina, and so it's the thing that's the Cherokee land starts shrinking. I think it's 1720 with the first piece of land down in South Carolina that's sold to the British.
This is a long process. A lot of people, when they think about Cherokees, they say, well, in 1838 they started removing Cherokees. The Cherokees started being removed a long time before that.
Yeah, there'd been some people out west
basically
20+ years.
We were it. We were the last pocket, and then they said, "Yeah, you're all gone now." I mean, so hey, it's time for us to take a break. We'll be back in about 3 or 4 minutes here. We usually
go ahead.
We usually play a song, or we do always play a song called "Gone Home." We dedicate that to all our loved ones and friends that have passed this week, and so we'll be back here in just a few minutes.
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
At Buy Here, Pay Here USA, we pay the most because we buy the best. And we make selling your car to us as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1, bring your car, truck, or SUV to one of our stores. 2, we'll give you a free appraisal with no obligation. 3, sell us your car. It's that easy. At Buy Here, Pay Here USA, we buy the best, we sell the best, and we pay the most. Visit us in Cleveland, Dayton, or Chattanooga, or go to buyheresellhere.com. That's buyheresellhere.com. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Did you know that U.S. Money Shops cashes all checks, even the ones most check cashers reject? Tax refund checks, government checks, payroll checks, and many more. And when you cash a check with U.S. Money Shops, we'll give you 10% off your next purchase. At U.S. Money Shops, we have everything you need at a fraction of regular retail. So stop by one of our 11 locations or visit us online at usmoneyshops.com.
Buy or sell or buy today, the better way at U.S. Money Shops.
Some restrictions may apply. See store for details.
Check into cash.
Need a little extra cash right away? Who doesn't? Turn your car into cash at Check into Cash.
Get up to $4,000 with your car title only from Check into Cash. You get more cash with a Check into Cash title line of credit.
Turn your car into cash today at Check into Cash. Visit checkintocash.com for the store near you.
$4,000 title line of credit maximum based on value of vehicle and ability to repay. Subject to credit approval. See store for details.
After 135 years, Hardwick Clothes, America's oldest since 1880, has delivered on our commitment to produce the finest navy blazer in America. This limited edition blazer was announced as the style winner in Garden & Guns Made in the South Awards. Crafted in Cleveland, Tennessee, we use premium Italian wool from Vitale Barberis, custom Bimberg lining, and signature gold buttons. It's available through the finest men's stores or at hardwick.com.
All of my friends that I loved yesterday have gone. They have gone home. Gone home. They have gone home. The songbirds are singing, the dell seem to say have gone. They have gone home. Gone. They have gone home. They've joined the heavenly fold. They're walking the streets of here gold. They left one by one as the work here was done. Gone home. They have gone home. Gone home. They have gone home. Life here is lonely since they've gone before. Gone. They have gone home. Gone. They have gone home. The old weeping willow that stands by the door sadly sighs. They have gone home. Gone home. They have gone home. They've joined the heavenly fold. They're walking the streets of pure gold. They left one by one as the work here was done. Gone home. They have gone home. Gone. They have gone home. it over. Just me. Are they all gonna have to be told, or just me?
Welcome back to Old Town Cleveland here on Whoop FM 99.9, or you can go to the internet at www.whoopfm.com. You can call us here at 614-5553 if you're out of the area. If you're in Cuba, call 423-614-5553. We're talking to Charlie Rodarmer here today. He is the executive director of the Sequoia Birthplace Museum. He's also a baseball player. He's a reenactor.
He wears kilts.
And he's Worcestershire. He's Worcestershire sauce. Is that it?
Samuel.
Samuel Worcester?
Worcester. Well,
now he's a big preacher.
Yes.
In the time during the removal,
Yes.
he was on the Cherokee side.
And I think he's
Educator, would you call him?
Well, he went to university and he was becoming a missionary, and he thought he was going to be going overseas. Well, they ended up saying, well,
The foreign mission for you is the Cherokee Nation, is
and
what they said.
they sent him down south to mission here to the Cherokee.
Spring Place, maybe?
I'm not sure. I got to do more reading and stuff, but he ends up. He's very, I guess, gifted with language. And so one of the things, he learns to speak Cherokee, and then he's involved in trying to create a Cherokee writing system so he can translate the Bible into Cherokee. And so he's working on this. He ends up going back north, and when he hears of this great invention of Sequoia, he drops what he had been working on. And that's one of the things I admire him so, is a lot of times in this 1800s or, the 1700s, the white missionaries, it's, we know better, this, we'll do it this, our way. And, here's this man, educated man, and he drops what he had been working on, everything he had, and he comes south and he learns what Sequoia had done, and he takes what Sequoia did, and it's that impresses me. It's one of those little pieces of evidence a lot of people don't notice, but through his life, he my brain, he and 12 other whites, the governor of Georgia created a law that said you have to swear your oath of allegiance to me, any whites living in the Cherokee territory,
Or go to prison.
And so 12 of the men were arrested. They actually crossed over into the state of Tennessee and arrested them at Red Clay.
Yes.
And took them back down to Georgia.
With John Ross being arrested at Flint Springs.
Correct.
Along with Thomas Paine.
Right. Howard Payne.
Yeah. Thomas
Howard
Thomas Paine. Payne Howard, I don't know.
So, but
Charlie and I have most of the facts right.
Yes. But most of the men actually kind of take the governor's offer and walk off. But Wooster and another gentleman pushed the issue.
Yes.
And it's Wooster versus the state of Georgia.
Yes.
And that's the landmark case that the Supreme Court said you can't remove these people. These, they are a sovereign nation. And that court decision is based, most any decision that the Supreme Court has to make bases their decision off of Wooster versus the state of Georgia.
It's pretty amazing times when you really get in deep. I know that you said something about translating the Bible. Ron and I have been kind of talking up the idea of that we're getting a new elementary school here in Cleveland. And actually, that new elementary school would be sitting on the 75 acres that belong to Candies Creek Mission.
Ooh.
Isn't that exciting? And two of the Bushy Head guys, I don't know which two, went to school there. And they learned enough English and learned enough Cherokee that they both, one of them translated Genesis and one of them translated another part of the Bible once they got out west. I thought that was really interesting. And also, and the Foremans went there, and the Bigsby's, like Bisbee Creek. And we learned this week that a young lady by the name of Cobb went to school there. Her last name was Cobb, and she wrote a diary, which really gives us some insight into the area after the removal. I think she came back here, but she went out west and was the first female doctor for the Cherokees once they were out west, and she came out of that school. Also.
We would like the city to name the new school Candies Creek.
Oh, that'd be neat.
Yeah. Now, of course,
I think it's so appropriate.
Yes.
It would be, and of course, all we got to do is convince city officials to do something.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm
And
going to
that's
work on
not
that.
always easy.
Now, I have a couple more things I want to say.
Okay. Hey,
Tomorrow,
Bob.
Laura Bryan Spann, the other graveyard diva, we call ourselves the Graveyard Divas, she will be doing a presentation at the Charleston Calhoun Hiwassee Historical Society. They're at the Hiwassee Center across from the football field in Charleston at 3 p.m. She has found pictures of old buildings that were in Charleston and old buildings that were in Calhoun. Some of them still standing, some of them not. And she's going to talk about the history of those buildings from the 1900s to 1960. And if you remember the old Charleston and old Calhoun, you will definitely want to come to this presentation. Plus, they're revealing their new plans. They're about $43,000 short of having the $300,000 they need to expand the building so it really will become a history center. And I say congratulations to them because they have done a lot in a short period of time. Now, I have a question. There was a motel, one of those little motor lodges, at the corner of McIntyre Street and Ocoee Street where the Forestry Service building is now located. It was built in the 1960s. I need for somebody to tell me the name of that motel. And then I'm looking for a relative of Jonathan Returns Meg's Only.
Any relative.
Any relative, I don't care if he was your 8th great uncle or something. If we have a relative that we can prove is a relative of the tiniest bit, we can get him a free marker for his grave in Calhoun. And we know that there were some onlys that went to school in the 1970s in Calhoun school. We just haven't found them yet.
Most likely, if your last name's Only,
You're
and
gonna
you're
be
from
related.
Southeast Tennessee, you're going to be related. And this guy is just legendary. He is really
He was funny in my book. Now, Charlie's got something coming up on February the 6th at the museum.
Yes.
Sequoia Birthplace Museum.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Dwayne King, he's probably
Fabulous.
one of the leading experts on Cherokee history and culture.
Mm-hmm.
He's been so involved, was director of the Museum of the Cherokee Indian, and he's at the Gilcrease Museum in Tulsa, Oklahoma. But Dwayne has done so much research and so much information. One of the things, he is going to be speaking at Sequoia Birthplace Museum on February 6th at 1:30. It's a Saturday, and he's going to be talking about Sequoia, and he's going to be going over in depth a lot of what we kind of talked about today, some of the big tall tales, the out and out pure lies,
Fabrications,
and and what we know is true. And so he's going to be running through that on February 6th at the museum, Saturday, 1:30. So
any charge for this?
it's free. It'll be free,
Right.
and so you can kind of get in and see the museum too. on
Yeah,
that
there you
afternoon.
go. And they go over to Fort.
We're Deb and I are we're members of the Bradley County Genealogical and History
Historical
Society.
Society.
Historical Society here. I never get all these names right. Anyway, we're thinking about doing a small Cherokee class for the people here in the Bradley County area. We'll probably sometime, maybe March.
It's
March,
middle
April.
of January.
Well, it don't take long.
Yeah.
For you guys who know what you're
If I
talking
do the
about.
work.
But we do a one-day seminar for the local people who would like to know more about the true history of the Cherokee, not glamorized, not the book, but things that we know here.
Right.
And so if people are interested, just keep in mind it would probably be down at the Red Clay Museum. Probably cost you $20 with a small lunch included, $25, and it'd be a one-day event. And the money that we raise would be used towards history projects here in Bradley County for the Historical
Putting
Society.
up some markers. We have no
Oh,
markers
great.
there.
Silversmith. You talk about George Giss or Sequoia being a silversmith. Now, a silversmith basically just made jewelry? Or, I mean, is there any other purpose for a silversmith?
Well, you had one of the things that I think this is going back. Everybody makes a big deal out of the fact Sequoia is a silversmith. Well, he was a silversmith, then he became a blacksmith, and it was when he was blacksmith is when he needed to figure out how to keep track of his what people owed him for his work. And so that forced him to create a numbering system, and then from that, well, we can create a writing system. And so that's when the announcement in 1809, he announces in his blacksmith shop, hey guys, we could create a writing system. I think the reason people make the big deal of the fact that he was a silversmith is kind of like silversmith Paul Revere, great man, silversmith Sequoyah, great, I think that was like PR wise, it's the, it's a cleaner job. It's a more aristocratic job.
Is there anywhere that his occupation is listed, like on a census?
I don't know.
Because he may have been a little bit older by the time they started doing that, and didn't necessarily still be a blacksmith. I just thought that was be curious. So, have we found any articles that we can attribute to Sequoyah?
No, we've not. There's there is out in I think the Historical Society in Oklahoma has a page that he doodled on, and it's had some of his numbering, and then there's a picture of I can't remember who it was, but he had drawn a picture of somebody, another Cherokee. So there is a drawing of someone that he did, but we've never found any of the silver work. Now the kind of silver things he would have been making were gorgets, armbands, nose rings, finger rings.
Would he made any forks, spoons, knives?
He possibly could have. I mean, that's one of the things he would have had to have gotten.
Particularly with the English coming in, and
with casting or getting molds. I mean,
where would you get the silver?
Well, that's the thing. He would have traded or bought the silver. That would have been brought in by one of the traders, probably somebody there at the blockhouse.
And Paul Revere, his silversmith, the main thing he made was forks and spoons and knives. Wasn't that what Paul Revere made?
Yeah, Paul Revere was doing tea sets and doing all that kind of thing. I don't think Sequoyah had a market for tea sets down here in the Overhill,
or even knew what they were. Necessarily knew what they were.
Well,
I mean,
utilitarian stuff
the
that
Cherokee
the
Cherokee down the road didn't need a tea set,
right? But a Cherokee, if he had enough hides, he wanted more gorgets. The more gorgets I had hanging down my chest, the more pendants my wife had on her, on her dress, showed I'm a really good warrior, or I'm a really good hunter, or I'm a very, so the more silver.
You just had to outdo the Smiths next door, right?
Yes.
The Smiths and the Jones.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Ron and I have a hard time staying on the main roads when we go somewhere, so we'd gone up to Sequoyah, and we were out exploring, and went down the backside of a cornfield and found a nice little cemetery sitting on the edge of the river. Are you familiar with that one?
Which not?
No. Okay. It's on the other side of the lake there from where Sequoyah is, I think. It's fairly close to the big.
On the road over on Corntassel, over on that side of it.
Where does the road go past your museum?
It goes. You can eventually end up at Telco Plains.
I don't know. We were somewhere in that neighborhood, and like I say, we were just exploring, and there were some really old graves there, probably from the early 1800s.
A bunch of duck hunting sites back in there. Hey, go ahead, caller, you're live.
Hello, Rod.
Hey, Miss Ella, how are you?
Got any snow?
Oh yeah, it's snowing right now. It's snowing right now.
Well, now, Miss Ella, you still like young men? Now, Charlie's a young guy here. He may just be your age.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well,
she's a little far away, Charlie.
I've got some pictures that I've had made, and one of them's hugging a young guy.
Well, I know how you are. Was you drinking a beer when you was doing it too?
No, I don't do that.
Since when did you stop?
When I stopped. Oh,
Yeah.
Lord, I can't tell you when I stopped. I don't remember. Oh, gosh. I'm getting too old. I saw I'm 77, you know.
77.
This is the fifth time you've been 77, though. Well, is it snowing up there?
I want to tell you something.
Tell me something.
Yeah. You remember I went to the Price is Right A long time ago.
You went to the
Yeah.
Price is Right. We remember that.
Well, I had a picture taken by the wheel, and this girl down there at Wolf Radio, she's finally got my picture, and she's gonna send it to me standing by the wheel.
Well, that's so good. Yeah.
I've been wanting to get that picture for so long.
Well, I want to see a copy of that.
Okay,
Well, hey,
I'll have a copy made.
all right. Well, you can stay out of the snow.
I ain't been out. It's too cold out there.
It's too cold here, and it's not as cold as it is there. All right. Well, you keep everything straight out there. Bye bye now.
Hard now.
Oh well, you can keep that stuff.
Coming down hard.
All right. We'll see you later. Bye bye. That's Miss Ella out in
Blackfoot, Idaho.
Blackfoot, Idaho.
Definitely cold out there.
Yeah, it's a little colder there than it is
Little
here.
climate change.
It's too cold here, isn't it? Is it cold outside, Byron? Well, all right. Wet, cold, and wet. I don't like that. What are we talking about? Silversmiths. Once again, tell people where the museum is if they want to come from Polk, Bradley, or McMinn County, how they get there.
Well, if you just go over and hit 411, or you can go up 75 and take exit 72 onto 72. As you're going up 411, you'll hit the second red light in Von Orr is where Highway 72 comes in. The third red light as you're going north on 411, right there at the Sloan Center, or Sloan's there in Von Orr. Hardy's on one side and Sloan's on the other. You turn there on the 360, and we're a mile and a quarter down on the right. We share an island with Fort Loudon State Historic Area, so it's a full day trip. You got Chota and Tanasi, that's 12 miles on up the river, the lake now, from where we're at. So
Fort Loudon's on your left before you get to Sequoia, right?
correct. It's the first drive on the left, and we're the first drive on the right, and we're on an island. So
We did fish outside there. There's other activity sites inside the museum. Tell what's outside the museum out there.
what we've got outside the museums, one of the things we kind of mentioned earlier is we've got the Maxwell D. Ramsey Shoreline Trail. It's a mile and a half. It's a very moderate hike. It's not, I think, it's there's just a little bit of a hill, but depending on the direction you go, it's downhill. So there's the hiking trail. We also have a reconstruction of the council house back during the anniversary of Lieutenant Henry Timbers Lake's visit to the Overhill in 1762. We built the framework to the townhouse up at Chota, so you can actually walk in, you can see how big this structure was.
Yes.
Now, it's just the framework. There would have been more logs. There would have been a layer of river cane. There would have been a layer of bark, and then there would have been sod. And so that sod would have made it warm in the winter, cool in the summer. The bark would shed the water. The river cane holds all that material up, and then the massive logs in this framework gave it the strength to stand. And you can see the doorway. It was a small doorway, L-shaped. Timberlake said you almost had to get down on your hands and knees to crawl in. And it kind of went forward, then turned in this L-shaped doorway, and then you came into the structure. You couldn't see anything. It was like pitch black. But
the L-shape would have been sort of a windbreak?
Probably a windbreak, but also a security. I think the townhouse was kind of used like Europeans would use a keep. You put all your non-combatants, your women, older people, your babies, all the families, they would all be in the keep, and you had a tiny little door, and so you'd have like some of your best knights who would guard that door, and nobody could get inside well, that was the kind of the same kind of two warriors with spears or with weapons. Nobody's going to get through that L-shaped door into the structure. Now the rest of your warriors are outside, keeping the enemy out of your, getting them out of the town or keeping them from the town.
You have a monument down there.
A mound.
A mound.
We also have the Memorial Mound, which back during all this archaeology, they found 192 remains that could be identified as 18th century Cherokee. And part of when the Cherokee realized they couldn't stop this process, that this lake was coming, there was no way of stopping it, the Cherokee went to TVA and said, how are you going to help us commemorate and remember the Cherokee that lived there? And so Sequoyah Birthplace Museum is a result of that, the meetings that followed in that. And there was 38 concepts that came up, and they talked about, some they liked, some they hated. One of which was the Sequoyah Birthplace Museum. The other was the memorial mound and returning the remains. This was the first time it was done. For years, Native peoples have said, these are human beings. These are our grandparents. These are our ancestors. And so this was the first time that the University of Tennessee and the Tennessee Valley Authority returned those 192 remains. And so that set a precedent for what came in the 90s with NAGPRA, the Native American Repatriation Act, that gives all federally recognized tribes and nations the right to go and get their ancestors back, their remains, from universities, government entities. And so
when we say a mound, it's not a huge burial mound like you would think woodland Indians.
Right.
It's a small mound with a memorial wall,
There's a rock wall in
and
front
then
of it.
the interments are around that.
Well, it was actually the soil around here is very acidic, and so the human body it breaks down. And so you look at some of the old photos of
The
some
remains
of the
were very small.
Well, they were you would see full skeletons, but when the archaeologists would touch them, they would just fall and crumble into dust. I mean, they would just kind of dig around it, and then they took the pictures, and then when they touched it, it fell to dust. And so most of the remains were placed in the mound itself, so they're buried and secured in vaults underneath. And so
I know we had remains removed from the Bates farm, not the Bates farm,
Varnell.
From the Varnell farm in Charleston, and
they're
sitting on a shelf up in McClung Library, and I'm going, we need to bring those back and put them where they, at least close to the area, and I think that might happen. But
now you also have some statues outside the kids would love and things.
one of our board members who passed away a number of years ago, Bill Martin, bought the Cherokee Basket Bear. It was a program they did up in Knoxville.
Cute.
They had bears all over town, and
now they have those same bears, but larger in Cherokee, I believe.
Right, they've done the kind of the same program. But Bill, back 15 years ago or 10 years ago, Bill bought that bear and donated it to Sequoyah Birthplace Museum. So we've got the bear there. We just built a dog trot log cabin.
Did you?
We've got that to represent
Vintage logs or new logs?
Vintage logs. It was originally built in Transylvania County, North Carolina. It was torn down before World War II and moved to Charlotte, outside of Charlotte. The Judge Campbell down in Charlotte, North Carolina, donated the cabin to us. We went down, a crew of us went down, tore the cabin down, hauled it back up. We stored it, and we finally secured enough money. And then over the last year and a half, we've rebuilt the cabin. And so it's a pristine dog trot log cabin. The interesting thing, there's a dog trot log cabin that's almost identical to what we did out in Salazar. So there's one out.
Yes, I've visited that one out there, and I knew it had something to do with Sequoyah, doesn't it? I mean, they kind of mentioned him there.
Well, it's this time the Cherokee in 1810. They're building log cabins, and they're building them just like the Europeans. And so you've got single pen log cabins, you've got 2-story single pens, you've got dog trots, you've got a whole world. You've got them. The Cherokee are building them with dirt, log cabins with dirt floors. Cherokees are building log cabins with wooden floors.
In the evaluations I've been typing, that says that they have good floors and doors, and sometimes they have light windows. And I would think that would be glass windows.
Awesome.
And,
I'd like to see that.
Yeah. Brick chimneys, not stone, but brick.
Wow.
I mean, some of the houses were really fancy,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I think that. But then when you get down to, I guess it was the little people that were living out. They'll say that the cabins and things were in poor condition, and they didn't get very much for those. Spring houses, mills, dams. They got paid for the dams.
Real quick, the National Trail of Tears national meeting next year, or this year, excuse me, we're in this year now.
Yeah, this year.
We'll be in Dalton, Georgia in about October.
First part of October.
So if you would like to attend that, You can
It's usually $125, and the $25 is your membership fees that you have to pay to go. And they feed you lots of meals.
You can join the National Trail of Tears Association. You can go to their website. You can join for $25 now. And if you'd like to join, and you would become a member of Tennessee, but if you'd like to also be a member of Georgia or North Carolina or wherever it is, add $10 to it, and you can be multiple members of multiple states. So if you've ever been really interested in going to a National Trail of Tears meeting, they've got some great events and speakers. You'll learn a lot about it. Charlie was a presenter at the National Trail of Tears meeting this past year out in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and we got to go see some dedications of some new signs and locations. We've seen Bushy Head grave remarked.
Nancy Bushy Head's
Nancy
grave.
Bushy, we've seen that remarked, and we got to go to a Chickasaw dinner. Was it Chickasaw? What was it?
Pig fry.
Yeah, pig fry, which was...
It was a pig fry. It wasn't a Cherokee, but it was some other tribe there. And they... Choctaw? Maybe Choctaw. Choctaw. And
the storyteller was my favorite.
They had pig fry, grape dumplings, fry bread.
Beans, fried
Pretty good
bread.
eating, you know.
Oh, really?
But, great storytelling by that we heard there. So if
This is
you're
your
interested in
chance to
that,
see it
start thinking
close.
about that with the Trail of Tears being so prominent here in the Bradley County history, someone may want to go down to that. It's about you wouldn't have to buy a hotel this year, of course. That'd be good for us.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it's at the visitor center.
But $125, and that's meals included, and the
Well,
bus
some of the meals,
tours
yeah.
and things of that nature, and like I say, $25 of that is your membership fee.
My understanding is the bus tour is going to go over to Ellijay, Georgia, I believe, to the McNair farm. Will be one leg of that trip, and the bus tours are always, I think, great.
I mean, all the conferences I've ever gone to, my favorite, the Trail of Tears, and then I'm also a member of the Tennessee Association of Museums. Those two conferences are the best conferences I've the one thing I love about the Trail of Tears conferences is it is made up from so many different types of people. You have scholars like Dr. Dwayne King, Brett Riggs, Dr. Brett Riggs, and so you've got things that are coming, from the scholarly academic level. Then you've got amateurs, amateur archaeologists, amateur historians, genealogists, cartographers, people that love maps. I mean, you'll see them standing over or sitting over in a corner and they've got, have you seen this map of Arkansas and this old military, and look at this, it's got the bridge and so you've got all these different perspectives that come in and you've got people that are trying to put their ancestors' footstep on that map, the whole from where they started.
It is a
to
very
the end.
moving experience when you are
Incredible.
surrounded by some people who know what trail their ancestors took, and you go and you stand with them when they step on that soil of that trail, that part of that old trail that's been marked. It's a moving experience.
Incredible.
And it's like when we got to Cape Girardeau last year, we went to the Trail of Tears Park for that dinner Ron was talking about. And we stood at the Mississippi River, and when I looked across that river, I said, I cannot imagine having been, I believe they would have been on the far side of the river, looking across at that big rock cliff that we were standing on, and they were thinking how in the world and what in the world's going to happen to us when we go out into this river. And you just, it's not, and we went to, what was that little town we went to, and they dedicated those signs. Nice folks. We got a phone call, Ron.
I can't remember all the towns. I can remember where I was most of the day. Go ahead, caller. You're live.
Hi, this is Randy. I was calling, I heard you talking about the Trail of Tears.
Yes.
They had the story of Samuel Parks on History Detectives a few years ago. This woman in Texas asked how his Bible turned up in Oklahoma, and her family was passed it down to her in Texas. And I did some research on it while I was there, and I found out that Samuel Parks had taken 7 wagon loads of his relatives through Nancy Ward's daughter, Susanna, to Oklahoma. And while he was out there, he passed away from a fever. And 3 years later, his body was returned to Cleveland and buried over at Henniger's Chapel.
Mm-hmm. And if you go look at his grave, it's very distinctive of the other graves. It's a fairly tall little spear-looking thing, and then around the bottom of the edge, they put rocks in a circle, kind of a Cherokee kind of thing. But they respected him greatly because he saved a lot of people's lives, and he was related to Washington Parks too. And in this evaluation book that I'm retyping, the Parks families, their land is listed in there.
Yeah, they at one time Nancy Ward property ran from Henniger's Chapel all the way up to Parks Lake. That's what I found out through my research.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to see that research. Not that I don't believe you. I'd just like to see that research, because I know that William Blythe originally owned from what is like over where the Holiday Inn is up on top of the hill, all the way to Blythe's Ferry too, is what was said, until the white man got here, and then they made you kind of pick what land, if you was going to live on it, you know, what land you wanted.
Well, Samuel owned a good bit of property out there, and from what I understood, he sold a bunch of the property to be able to finance those wagons to take them out to Oklahoma.
I know that he was a wagoneer, and I do know that he took multiple trips, and I'm glad to know. I always wondered about him being buried at Henniger, and so now I know. I would, and from when I look at the properties and stuff, I was thinking that he lived up in that area.
Well, he did at one time, yeah. Well, Nancy Ward lived out in that area too at one time until she, when she got older, they moved her over to McCoy River, there where she had a Five Killer Inn, which was where Five Killer, her son, lived, and they had that.
Well, it's just like now when you get older, you go live with your children. So sometimes you'll find people that were even listed in two different households in the census several miles apart because they lived there part-time. But, you know, we just have to go based on what the other people wrote down.
Yeah.
But I think Samuel Parks is a very interesting person. And was his wife a relative of Nancy Ward?
She was his daughter.
Okay.
Susanna was her daughter. They're buried head to head. She's buried on the other side of the tombstone.
With Samuel?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much.
Hey, thank you for calling.
I love y'all's programs.
Well,
thank you. Thanks for calling in. Gives us lots of things to think about.
I want to change the subject real quick.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, we talked earlier about Charlie playing in that vintage baseball league, which is really great.
I love the rules.
When we did the Booze Traveler for the Travel Channel, they had a part on there talking about the vintage baseball league. Basically, it tied to after they got through playing ball, they went and drunk beer. Charlie. So,
oh no, they wouldn't do that.
But it was a great history lesson about the vintage baseball, and we'll get back to it. Let's get to the call. Good morning, you're live on Old Town Cleveland.
Good morning, Ron. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm fine, thank you.
I'm doing okay. I'm sorry about Debbie's mother.
Well, that happens, and she was ready. She'd been here for a long time. She was almost 87.
Well, that's good, but we still miss them.
That's right. Always will.
Yes, sure will. But anyway, I wanted to call in. I am so sorry about it because I know I lost mine, and I think of her every day.
All righty. Well, we appreciate you being a listener every week.
Well, I've enjoyed this, but I don't know nothing about the Indians.
Well, you're finding
Just a little bit before your time.
You're finding out about them today, and guess what song I'm going to play later?
Oh, I know what you're going to play.
She always wants to hear just a swinging.
I bet she gets out there dancing, pulls her skirts up to her knees and dances. I bet you anything.
Hey, Ron, I couldn't dance 2 steps. But let me tell you why.
Why's that?
I've had 2 hip surgeries, and I can't motivate like I used to.
Well, you can snap your fingers to the music.
That's right.
We'll talk to you next week, sweetie. Bye-bye. Bye
Bye-bye.
bye. We always enjoy your call.
But Charlie, you know, you've been playing. You told us about a little earlier about playing, and we got into the other subject. But I understand that you're retiring.
Yes.
I mean, you're like big pros. You made that big money for 2 years, and now you're going to retire, right?
Yeah, all of zero.
But not completely from the game.
Right. It was just this year when we finally got the schedules. If you go to the website, the games are not lit. They haven't updated from last year, but they got us all the dates. And when I sat down, I was going to miss a couple of games because of work, and a couple of games because of some other commitments. And then I missed last year as well as would miss this year. The tournament is out in Nashville, actually in Franklin and Tennessee, and it's the I can't remember the dates. It's the weekend after Labor Day. Well, the weekend after Labor Day is my fall festival at Sequoia Birthplace Museum, so there's no way I can even make the tournament. So I kind of I didn't think it would bother me as bad as it did, but it was one of those things I couldn't get focused sometimes this last festival because I was wondering what's going on at the tournament.
So, but you're going to umpire now.
So yeah, what I decided to do is
you're wearing glasses now, so you're better as an umpire. What you're saying, right?
Oh yeah. So I'm going to actually become one of the umpires, and then that way I can pick the games I can play or be at, and
so you can go drink beer after the game.
Well, and
yeah.
According to some of the historical research, some of the umpires drank during the game. So,
oh, that's NASCAR. No,
so well, one of the things with the umpires, you know, kind of some of the interesting things about being an umpire. If I miss the play, if I can't, first thing I do is I go to the two players. And were you safe, or did you get him out? And so if those two can't say, well, yeah, he got me out, I'm out, or I got him out, you know, no, you didn't get me out. If they start discussing it, then it's like, okay, got to hush them up, and I get the two coaches. If the coaches can't, well, from my perspective, he was out, and so yeah, he's out. If the coaches can't agree, of course, if I didn't see it, then I can walk to one of the closest spectators and say, sir, was he safe or was he out? And so he was safe. And so they will rely on the spectators to actually make the call. You know, the only strike in vintage baseball is if you actually swing. So the umpire keeps up with those strikes. But other than that, if a pitcher's throwing bad pitches, the umpire might say, you know, sir, I'm going to fine you if you don't present the ball so that the striker can hit it, because that's one of the ultimate part of vintage baseball, or the 1860s baseball, was the pitcher presented the ball for it to be hit. And
now, is it underhand or overhand?
Underhand.
Underhand
released below the belt. So it's not fast pitched underneath. There's a couple of guys will put a little bit of a spin and put a little bit of a little English on it, but typically you're to present the ball so you can strike it, and then the play is made in the outfield and the infield. So that's where the game was played, and it's a whole lot more interesting. I've watched a little bit. I'm not a sports person, but I've caught it was a game last year where the commentators were talking about that the National Baseball League were actually trying to figure some ways to make it a little more faster and a little more, you know, spectator interesting. And I find it interesting because, you know, the old days, I can sit there and watch the vintage baseball because, I mean, it's the game is always moving. Something's happening. And, you know, whereas you sit and watch a modern baseball game and you're watching two guys play catch.
They're paying a guy $20 million not to let you hit that ball. That's
exactly.
You know, let's slow it down, and you just, you know. So it's interesting. It's a great saving of the history too, I think. So, but you're still going to be involved in that this year, and so we'll talk about that as vintage baseball comes along. Chattanooga has two teams, and Knoxville. If you go to Nashville,
how
you
was
can
the
pick up
game
games.
down on the polo field?
It was awesome. It had rained the night before, so there was this little section that kind of was a little bit muddy, which made it for the outfield a little entertaining. and a couple of guys were pretty much mud daubers when they came back. But
Is this barehanded?
barehanded, no gloves at all.
And
Now
here's
it can bounce and then you catch it and it's an out.
Right.
Okay.
You catch it on the fly and it's an out. And that's if you catch it on the fly and the runner, if you're on a base and you're running and they catch it on the fly, you got to go back, tag up before you can go.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it bounces and they catch it, you can continue on. You can run on.
But it's an out if you catch it on one bounce.
It's an out for the striker,
Yeah.
but the runner doesn't have to tag back up. He can keep going.
I tell you, throwing that hard ball, you played catcher, I understand.
Yes, sir.
And they threw the ball from outfield. Your hands had to be pretty rough at the end of the day, wouldn't they?
I was taking a lot of ibuprofen.
Oh.
And the stitching's different on that ball. Why is it like that?
It's all one piece. It's one piece of leather, and then it's folded up where a modern.
I see it. It's one piece of leather and it's cut sort of curve around the ball.
Right.
And then it has 4 seams on it.
Modern balls cut like this. It's cut in 2 pieces.
2 pieces.
And then they fit together, to form the round ball. Whereas with the vintage baseball, it's just a flat piece of leather that's been cut and then stitched up.
I'd have to let that bounce more than once. That's hard.
Going back to Sequoia Museum, tell us dates, times again.
And you offer also, Cherokee language classes there, don't you? How are those going? Do you have very many people participate?
Really well. Visit our website. We've just started this past Monday. We've already started the Cherokee language class for this winter class. Typically we run 4 weeks, and we'll have a class every Monday night. And
this is actually ladies coming from Cherokee.
we have Shirley
$40 fee.
Yeah, it's $40.
That's real reasonable.
You do get a discount after you take it the first time because we want you to come back. That's one of the things. To learn a language, you got to keep coming and you got to keep doing it.
It's got to, you have to hear it in a meaningful environment to pick up on the words. All I know is OCO.
Sure.
I'm still working on English.
Yeah.
And as my English teachers say, you need a lot more repetition.
I love the fact that Ron, because he's retired, he is just now getting to come to the Cherokee, to the removal. Trail of Tears meeting. He's over and he's just having the best time talking to this fella. And I thought he has no idea that guy is the chief of the Cherokee Nation.
That's who it was, yeah.
And they were having a wonderful time.
Oh, yeah.
And then he came by and gave us all a pen.
Times and dates.
Sequoia Birthplace Museum, we're open Monday through Saturday, 9 to 5. Sunday, we're open 12 to 5. We're only closing Christmas Day, New Year's Day, and Thanksgiving Day, so don't have to worry about that. We've got the lecture on February 6th at 1:30 at Sequoia Birthplace Museum with Dr. Dwayne King, and that'll be kicking off our lecture series. Keep an eye out because we will be developing a lecture, it'll be on Sundays at 2 o'clock the rest of the early winter, spring. So we'll have topics of Sequoia, the language, hoping to get a gentleman back named Frank Brannon, who's he's revived the press. He's actually got he's done research on the Cherokee Phoenix and the press that they use down there. He's got a press, and he's been doing. There's a gentleman up north and that makes syllabary type, and so that's we hope to have him.
Okay, when they were doing the syllabus back in the day, were those Russian letters or something that they revised, or did they make? Or is that
well, one of the things Sequoia.
I go, ooh, that looks familiar when I'm looking at it.
Sequoia created his images from his own mind by his own hand, and they didn't exist anywhere else in the world. But when they wanted to buy the printing press, they could not afford to have all that type reproduced, plus all the different sizes you needed, all that, so the Cherokee Nation couldn't afford the press and the syllabary type. And so there was a meeting that took place with Elias Bootnott and some other Cherokees that adapted Sequoia symbols. They're very cursive, they're very flowing. We have examples of it at the museum, but they're very cursive, very flowing symbols. And they adapted the symbols that if you look at the syllabary, they're symbols we recognize. And those made it cheaper to buy the printing press and all that type. You'll see some symbols I mean, there's German symbols, there's Greek symbols. Well, those existed, so it didn't cost any more to buy the type.
That's close. We'll use this for this. Yeah.
Exactly. We'll flip some upside down. We'll put tails on some. That'll cost a little more, putting the little tails or the squiggles, but it'll make it look different. And then we'll use some type that don't exist anywhere else in the world, and that makes it uniquely Cherokee. So,
How many, when the Phoenix, how many copies was that being printed and distributed? Do you
oh
have any
my
idea?
word,
In
thousands?
English and
yes.
in
I mean, it was
Cherokee.
it was it's the first bilingual newspaper in the United States, Cherokee and in English. The years that it was published, you could buy a subscription. I mean, I forget, but you could buy a subscription to the Phoenix and have it delivered to you. And I can't remember the cost right now. I mean, it was like a couple of dollars to get a yearly subscription.
I saw an original the other day. A friend of mine had it for sale and wanted me to look at it. Now, I think, is it $300 or $600 that whoever owned it was wanting for that newspaper? And I thought, well, if you was really into that, or if somebody had a museum and they needed a paper, that's a really good, probably a good, I don't know. I wanted to see the newspaper to see if there was anything of interest printed, but I didn't.
Did it continue to be printed after they went to Oklahoma?
Well,
or did it become something else?
There's a whole thing. There's some tall tales, and there's some there's some things that we're not sure about. See, for years, what I've read and what I'd always heard is the state of Georgia sent the militia in and they confiscated the press, and it disappeared. And there was supposedly a bunch of the type was thrown down a well. Well, when they did archaeology down there, this was something Frank Brannon had told us in his lecture a couple of years ago. They did the archaeology on the well, and they found a handful of type.
Oh my!
But it was a handful of type. It wasn't. There would have been thousands. I mean, it would have been, huge handfuls that it would have if they had thrown everything down there. So, one thought is that was thrown down to just make it as kind of show that if anybody did look, well, we find some type and there it is. Oh yeah. So, one story is that Elias Boutnot. Now, Elias Boutnot was instrumental in raising the money to buy the printing press and the type.
And he was related to the Ridges.
Yes. I mean, and he goes around basically raising all this money. Now, one of the theories is, or one of the stories that I've heard is he came in and he took the press himself and supposedly sold it off. But we don't know. There were records that the same size, I think that it was printed like 18 or 19 inches by 22 inches or something like that. About 6 months after the press was shut down at New Echota, about 6 months later, there was a newspaper opened up about 100 miles away in another town that was on that same size. So a lot of people think, or some people think, that whether it was confiscated by the militia, state militia of Georgia, or Elias Boutnot came and got it.
There was some controversy over it.
Maybe
he took that permission.
If you happen to have that in your garage, please contact
and
me.
I don't think it was illegal for it to be in Georgia or something at some point in time. Well, that's another one of those.
Georgia was making a lot of laws and they were trying where all this, the Trail of Tears starts is Lumpkin, Governor Lumpkin of Georgia. He's frustrated that the Cherokee are in the north taking up all this land. They're a sovereign nation. He can't deal with it.
There.
Well, and eventually that's one of the issues, but it's not a major thing.
Yeah.
Then you've got the Creek in the south that are taking up all this chunk of land down south, and so he's frustrated that half or a lot of his
natives
state
are there.
Yeah, and so he and Andrew Jackson are the two that form the perfect storm, and that's where the Trail of Tears actually, it had been talked about every presidential. Thomas Jefferson said, hey, we'll move all the natives west of the Mississippi. We whites, we Europeans, we'll keep everything east of the Mississippi, and everybody will live happily ever after. And so Thomas Jefferson's the one that kind of put that out there, and every president after that kind of said, well, we could move the Indians, move the natives out west. But it never...
Let a few white people move in there. It won't hurt anything.
But when Andrew Jackson got there, that's when it
yeah.
And my most interesting thing, the only time that a sitting president never acted on a Supreme Court ruling because Andrew Jackson, because the state of Georgia lost that lawsuit in the Supreme Court. They said, the Supreme Court says you cannot do that. And Andrew Jackson and Lufkin said, haha.
Who's going to force it?
And they did. I mean, so.
They just ignored it.
You know, just think what if a president tried to do that now.
Okay.
The other side of the. One last time. The Sequoia Birthplace Museum up in Von Noor. It's 326, right?
It's 360.
360.
Highway 360.
He gets most of the numbers right.
Anyway, go there. I strongly recommend to take your children there. Go see this museum. Come to Fort Loudon, see the film, let them run around the fort. A great afternoon. Man, $3 a head for adults and children under 12 free. You will never find anything cheaper and better to do.
Their bookstore up there is really good. I've bought several maps up there. And
if you've got a birthday or a present, you got to get somebody that's got everything. You can come to us. We've got unique stuff.
Good research. Tomorrow in Charleston, they'll be having the Hiwassee, the Charleston Calhoun Historical Society meeting will be at the Hiwassee Center at 3 p.m. and they will be talking about the old buildings that were in Charleston and Calhoun. Laura Brian Spann does excellent presentations. You'll want to be there.
Sandhill Crane Festival going on right now over in Birchwood. Go to the old Birchwood School, and you can drive over to the removal park or where the Sandhill Cranes is at, or you can take
advertising on the internet not to drive yourself because there's not parking space available.
But people will, and you can take the shuttle and do that. So if you've not been to the removal park, I strongly recommend another free thing you can go do. The Sandhill Crane Viewing Area, the wildlife refuge there, free to do. There's a lot of things you can do here in East Tennessee. It don't cost you a dime. Your family gas is $1.58 in some places around here. You can go just about anywhere right now. So get out, go up and see Charlie up there. Don't forget the National Trail of Tears meeting will be in Dalton, Georgia. You'll never get one much closer than that. And you live in the place where the Trail of Tears happen, I'd strongly recommend you go down there. Like I say, about $100 for the price of the conference, and maybe more next year. But the good thing is you don't have any hotel room costs there. Yeah. Meals, a lot of meals included. Not all of you meals, but some.
Usually the lunch meal.
Yeah. Yeah.
All righty. Well, thank you, Charlie, for coming to see us. We'll see you next January.
Well, thank you.
Anytime that you're having something, feel free to call us or send me an email, and we'll be glad to announce it for you.
And as the Congress approves and gives that property back to the Cherokee Indians, and it'll be the first full-time
officially give it back to them.
The first complete reservation in the state of Tennessee since removal.
Right.
Pretty impressive. We probably want to talk about that. That'll be a big thing. Hopefully, there'll probably be a dedication, and I know I know I want to be there for that. Every week we tell people it's your job to save history. You can do it in a big museum, or you can get the pictures from out from under the bed, out of the shoe boxes, out of the drawers. Get a little white label and write who's in that picture. Then share those pictures. You can record your mom and your dad. You can do it on your cell phone these days, because every day someone dies, history dies, and we need to save it. If you have that printing press in your garage,
we need it.
Pull it out.
Let me know.
There's other things out there too sitting in your garage that are probably great history finds. We always say everybody will remember Pearl Harbor, but
will we remember Aunt Pearl? See you next week on Old Town Cleveland.
Bye-bye, y'all.
Did my hometown get old?
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. Whoop FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
At Buy Here, Pay Here USA, we don't just sell cars, we buy them. Bring your car, truck, or